Can you guys hear me okay?
We are live. We are live. Hello, everybody. And we've got JMA on again to tell us more about the multiverse, the second chapter. Have you funded it already? The new Kickstarter?
Yeah. The funding is a funny thing. You put the funding level low because you want people to know they're going to get their books. Once you hit funding, then you can complete the campaign, and everyone that signs on is going to get the books. The funding does not necessarily reflect what we need to achieve in order for there to be a volume 3 of the multiverse. You know what I mean? So that these books can continue into the future. So yes, we hit our first funding level, I think within 24 hours or so. But in order for these books to continue, and I see them continuing for a long time, we need to get as many people on board as possible, as we did last time.
Cool. Would you ever envisage a time when you won't have to do a Kickstarter every round? Would you ever get to a point where, I don't know, you have funded enough, or you can get it out into shops and people can buy it from? Is it in the shops already? Or is it only from your Kickstarter?
No, it's not. It could be that when we finally, because I envision each of these as a 4-part miniseries. So maybe when each miniseries is completed, then we would distribute it out to comic shops. But right now, and for the foreseeable future, it's only available through Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is a great thing. It's just us in the audience, and that's it. There's nobody else in between, and that's what I like about it. It's a lot of work, for the 30 days that campaign is up. Not to mention all the work and preparation, the financial investment that my partner David Baldy put into this, and all the hard work we've both done, and all the artists have done to create this. The 30 days is exhausting. It goes against, I think, every instinct that I have. This relentless hyping of something. But as I learned the first time around, you have to, because someone said to me before I started the first one, he said, you're going to think that you're out there hyping all the time and people are sick of you and everyone has seen it. And then at the end of the 30 days, someone's going to come up to you and go, I didn't know you had a Kickstarter. Because you think you're reaching all these people, and you're reaching whoever's there in that sliver of time. You're not reaching all these people. So you have to kind of get over yourself, get out your drum and bang, 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 bang for 30 days. And in the midst of that, I'm trying to get my writing done as well. So it's a fine balance. And I'm doing a lot of podcasts too to get the message across. So that's the story over here. Bye.
Sign up. The link's down below. Sign up.
All right, the link's there. I'll see you around.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's a flyby. So do you have new bodies in on this? On round 2?
Well, everybody's. Well, I'll tell you. On the basic books, we've got basically the same crew except for Godsend. Well, let's run through the books. There's Godsend, which is sort of Jack Kirby meets the Matrix meets Philip K. Dick's story of personal and cosmic identity gone haywire. First issue was done by Matthew Dow Smith. Matt is involved in some other projects that he's both writing and drawing, so he was not able to come back for the second issue. So we got Scott Koblish, who everyone knows from, among other things, his 7 years on Deadpool. A great artist, brought a lot of intense Kirby-esque energy to the second issue. And we have an alternate cover by Matthew Dow Smith. He's back to do the cover, which was great. Perfect.
And a Deadpool tie-in this week.
Right, that's right. That's it. I didn't even think about that. We should have Deadpool in really, really big letters on the Kickstarter page, right? Yeah. Scott Koblish, artist of Deadpool. Layla and the Lands of After, our fantasy adventure in the afterlife. Sean McManus, the great Sean McManus, is back again. And we have a beautiful alternate cover by Marguerite Sauvage. I don't know if you're familiar with her work. She just does beautiful, beautiful fantasy artwork, colorful, almost psychedelic in its dizzying power. It's really great stuff. I've been a huge fan of her work for quite some time, so I'm glad that we got her on this. Wisdom, our supernatural Western, Tom Mandrake is back. And for the alternate cover, Pat Zurcher, an artist I really, really admire. Someone who we've been talking about doing a project together for a couple of years now. We haven't quite landed it yet. But so I was really glad to at least get him on this great cover that he's done for Wisdom. And finally, Anyman, David Baldion is back to do the main artwork. And Derek Robertson, I have to say this a specific way. Derek Robertson, co-creator of The Boys, I always have to say that, is doing our variant cover for that one. So we've got everybody.
My Space Beaver comic down for that.
Yeah, he's I'm so happy to have him involved too, because I've talked to him about doing projects as well. And if we can't get the project together, at least we've got him on this cover, which is wonderful. And Liam Sharp, my buddy Liam Sharp, who was just nominated for a 2024 Eisner this year, is doing the cover once again for the trade paperback. So we've got quite a murderer's row of artistic talent on these books.
I love Liam. I've been trying to get him on the show for 2 years.
I worked with him originally on Man Thing back in the 90s.
Yeah.
It was a short run, but it was one of my favorite collaborations that I've ever had. We had a blast on that book.
That is so good. And then the one alternate cover by Neil Adams. I mean, it's just
we had a great time with that.
That was too good to be such a short run.
Yeah, they canceled us 3 times on that book. We got canceled. Same book, canceled 3 times. Canceled, reprieve, canceled. Anyway,
The Boys. Have you watched the TV show The Boys?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Could you imagine yourself writing a book in that style, or that kind of adult kind of tone and like gore? Would that be something you would ever work?
Adult tone is one thing. I enjoy The Boys as an audience. I think it's a really terrific show, but it's not in my wheelhouse as a writer to go to the spaces that they've gone to on this show. There was one episode this season where I thought, all right, they've gone way over the edge. And yet then they always bring you back with these like really wonderful character moments and twists in the plot. It's a fascinating show. It's a really fascinating show. And I'm very happy for Derek that he has this great success on this show, because it's well deserved. The very first story he ever did for DC back in the 80s was a Justice League International story that I wrote when he first started out. So here we are all these years later. It's kind of sweet. So that's the general lay of land. As the first time around, first issues, this time around second issues, and a second collected edition. But all the first issues, anyone that wants to come in and hop on board the train right now, all the first issues are available as add-ons with the campaign, as well as the first collected edition is available. So, and you can get them digitally, you can get them in print, you can do whatever, you can mix and match. We have a bonus book that we've thrown in, the Evergloom Mysteries. We've got T-shirts. We've got signed books. We've got special Zoom calls. I have 5 of them if people want to spend 40 minutes on Zoom with me, with one-on-one privately. That's available as well. And so, as I said, the cliche is we can't do it without you, but we literally can't do it without you. If people don't come on board and people don't sign up, there won't be a DeMultiverse Phase 2. So we hope that everyone will come on this journey with us. But as of now, anyone that signs on, you're getting all the books. And I have to stress, the books are like 95% done now. So no one's going to be sitting. By the time the Kickstarter is over, the books will be done. We'll have to put together the collected edition, off to the printer. And, in a few months' time, depending how long all that takes, people will have their books. No one's going to be, you hear these stories about, I contributed to this Kickstarter. It was like 1894, and I'm still waiting for the books to show up. That wasn't the case the first time with us, and it will not be the case this time.
Awesome. I gotta do a suck up moment again.
Wait, hold it. You're both talking, so I lost you both.
I got to do a suck up time for a minute when you said that. When you said the Kickstarter Zoom calls and things like that. And I'm going to throw my suck up in right here.
I'll mute you, Kyle.
I've had my Zoom calls with you here. No, I'm just thanking him. I mean, it's been 10 years of interactions, be it on Facebook or things like that, and the Zoom calls here. Dude, you're fucking awesome. And I really, really, really want you to know that. I mean, you wrote my favorite comic, and you continue to put out masterful work. I mean, these things are masterful.
Thank you.
Well, let's
I'm not blowing smoke. No, seriously, hold on, Gray, bite your tongue. I'm not blowing smoke. I'm saying, you pulled on Mandrake. You just listed off these comics of jaw droppers. I mean, they're extraordinary.
Thank you. We're very proud of the work that we've done on this. I think it's really, really good stuff. And I think anyone that's first of all, thank you for what you said. You always say nice things, and I always thank you from the bottom of my heart. But I'm glad that you said that. These are really good books. I always say, forget me for a minute. just for these artists alone, it's worth the price of admission. You know, it's incredible, the artists that we've got together for this, and I'm very proud of these stories. Really, these are all ideas that I've been carrying around for years. So to get all these ideas out into the world simultaneously is a fantastic thing. Fantastic thing.
Do you read your reviews? Do you read your reviews?
Yeah, I read reviews. I absolutely read reviews. Yeah.
What's been the best received out of the first wave, do you think?
You know, the general reaction that I saw was all really, really positive. I mean, it was a year and a half ago, whatever it was. So I don't memorize. I'm not that obsessed that I memorize them, but it was a really, really nice response. You know, I actually saw somebody the other day. I guess they were talking about it on a podcast, and this guy was talking about Layla and how it connected for him and his daughter. He related to the character in the story because it reminded him of his daughter, and it was just very sweet. You know, anytime anybody appreciates the work, whether it's one person or 1,000 people, it's a great thing. You know, I always say when I go to a convention or we have a conversation like this, and one person tells me how much the work has meant to them, that's worth a whole career right there. You know, it's a great thing, and I don't take it for granted, and I really, really appreciate it.
You see, number 2 is 95% done already. When it comes to the story, have you got all the stories for all of them already mapped out, or you just know where they're going to go and you'll write them when the time comes? How do you work?
What I do is I call them tent poles. You know what I mean? I put the tent poles out so I know where I'm headed. I know what the big beats are. I know what the end point that we're going to. But I leave room between those tent poles because when it's working, when the stories are really, really working, things happen in the writing that spring up and surprise me. I want my story to surprise me. I've used this metaphor before. You know, it's like the story is a horse and you're riding a horse and you're saying, I'm going to that town 3 miles straight ahead. And you start to gallop and the horse starts pulling off to the right in a completely different direction. And you're trying to push the horse toward the town and it pulls off. Always follow the horse because the horse is going to take you off in some direction you never expected. It's going to make your story better. That's the moment when the story and the characters start to take on lives of their own. And that's what you hope for. If it's just like I have rigidly worked out what the story is going to be and I'm just going to put it down like a machine, that's not fun for me. For me, the real beauty of the creative process is opening up the doors to the unconscious and letting the stuff out and seeing where it takes me.
Do you have stories sometimes where you've got like 2 or 3 maybe possible endings and you decide at the end what you're going to actually do?
Yeah, absolutely. And then sometimes the ending that you land on is not one of the 2 or 3 that you were thinking of in the first place. I'm working on a novella right now that started out very much as one thing, and the tent poles are all there, but everything between the poles is so different now, you know? And it's like, wow, this is not the story I started out writing, but it's much better, you know? Yeah. So and those are the things, those are the surprises that keep me going after doing this for 40 plus years.
Cool. And what about the ideas? How do you do you have like how do you come up with your ideas? You have a dream and you wake up and write it down? Do you have a book that you write all ideas in, like, and then go back and revisit them later on? Or
what usually happens is they're like mind movies to me when these ideas come. You know, if you're working on Spider-Man or whatever, and someone says, "Hey, we need a 4-issue miniseries. We want to talk about. Let's do this, 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 and this." You know, you're given the raw material first off. You know, you throw that raw material into the unconscious. You let it. It's kind of like a washing machine back there. You know, it turns around back there, and then the story comes out. But with the stuff, the creator-owned stuff like these, the multiverse books, these stories just seem to come. And I might be in the shower. I might. You know, often it's when I wake up in the morning because you know when you're sleeping, your unconscious is working the whole time. And I'll wake up in the morning and I'll see a mind movie. Suddenly there's a story. It's like I imagine there's a little bubble that's got a hologram, and then the bubble opens and I watch the whole hologram of this whole story appear in my head. And it's new to me. It's really like I'm watching a movie, like, wow, that's interesting. And then the trick is to get to the computer and get down what I saw in my head. And that's always the challenge with writing. There's the vision in your head and there's what you get on paper. And no matter how good what you finally get down is, somehow it always feels like there's a little bit of a gap between this perfect vision in your head. I guess that's the creative life, you know, and the final product, no matter how good the final product is. But yeah, the shower tends to do it. Something I had a discussion on social media with another writer about water and the unconscious. I find if I'm in the shower or if I'm taking a bath, I just relax and all this stuff just opens up. If I have a problem with a story, go take a shower, go lay in a bathtub, and the solution will appear. It's a really fascinating thing. And it feels like it's coming from someplace beyond me, certainly beyond my conscious mind.
I'm sure I've read that in a comic or a book somewhere that someone's being given like ideas from another dimension kind of thing. It sounds like something from a Strange Adventures or Mystery in
That's
Space.
exactly what it feels like. I've said for years, I feel like there's a dimension of story out there. These stories already exist. And the story is bouncing around looking for the particular writer to tell that story. And then it finds you and says, this is the guy, and it slips in through the back of your head. And suddenly, boop, there it is,
That's cool. When you do the multiverse ones, do you you write a whole story of one before you move on to the next one? Or do you ever find yourself writing 5 simultaneously? One day you'll write a few pages on one, the next day you write a few pages on another, or even the same day you work. How do you do?
I tend to drill down on one at a time. But I've been in positions in my life, if you work when I'm working for Marvel or DC, writing multiple books a month, it might be that you have to write 10 pages of this one now and 5 pages of that one and mix it up. But ideally, you want to be able to focus on that thing. Certainly not in the same day. It's hard to switch gears. I can be writing one story, proofreading and correcting another story, looking at art on a third story. But in terms of the actual writing, I want to drill down and work on one thing, at least one thing in that day. I can switch gears the next day easily. But, for that day, you want to stick with one thing.
Does it, when you're working for DC and Marvel and you've got deadlines and you've got your own projects, do you ever get, feel pressure? Do you ever get, do you ever get moments where it's all piling up on you, or have you been able to manage your time really well? Has it got a special way of managing your time for that? Or
I'd love to say after all these years I have a magical special way, but I don't. When my kids were growing up, they're both grown now, so just that my kids gave me a framework for the day. So it's like, oh, got to take this one to school, got to pick this one up, after school, take her to ballet, whatever it is. So I knew that within these particular parameters is when the work had to get done. When the kids are grown and out of the house, there are no parameters. And what basically leads me on is just the story itself. And I have to say, every time I start a new story, there's always that moment of, I can't do this. How do you do this? I don't know how to do this. And I mean it. It's like complete bafflement on how in the world does one create a story out of nothing? And it takes a while. And sometimes it might, depending on the deadline, it could take hours. It could take days. It could take weeks. But again, what I've learned is that period of thinking that you're stuck, that you're blocked, you're not at all, because the whole time that you're walking around the block or agonizing over it, your unconscious mind is working the whole time. And all of a sudden something clicks and you're off. But it's a funny thing that after doing it for so many years, there's always that moment, sometimes more than a moment, sometimes just a quick moment of, I don't know how to do this. How do you do this? And I'll turn to my wife and say, how have I done this for so many years? I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy moments of self-doubt like that. I suppose it's I think a lot of people could probably write stuff, but a lot of people have self-doubt and laziness and that kind of thing. It's a matter of applying yourself and not listening to the self-doubt in your head, isn't it, really, I suppose?
Right. And I guess, the self-doubt is part of the process. Maybe, and I'm thinking about this as we're talking about it. I never really thought of it before. That moment of I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Is just my conscious mind saying, hey, you don't have to do it now. Take a breath, let your unconscious mind take care of things, and I'll let you know when we're ready. And the funny thing is, depending on the deadline, that process happens quicker. If I have a month, I might spend, I've had, certain projects where I've oh my God, it's weeks. I haven't done anything. What's going on? And the deadline's in a week. And suddenly all of a sudden I write in a white heat for a week. But if it's due in 3 days, that same process gets telescoped down to 3 days. So it's your mind knows exactly how much time you need. It can compress that time. It can expand that time. It's a fascinating thing. I'm still, after all these years, I am baffled, mystified, and delighted by the whole creative process. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. It's magic and it's mysterious,
Yeah. Don't analyze it. Just be happy it's there, I suppose.
Exactly. Because it opens that door into mystery. And there's a lot of a lot of life that still remains mystery in a good way, in the best sense of the word, you know. And I like that. I like that.
Have you ever had any trouble with like not being able to meet the deadline?
I'm sorry. There's a lot of
I've muted
back
it.
noise there.
Yeah, I've muted it now. Have you had any problems like maybe with a deadline you couldn't meet, or any hassles with editors over not getting the work done quickly enough or anything like that?
Very rarely, very rarely. You know, sometimes things just happen and you get stuck, or life happens, life intrudes. Most editors are very understanding as long as you come to them and say, here's the situation. You know, this has come up, that's come up. I thought I would have it done by this week, but it's going to take another week or another week and a half. The problem arises when people don't bother to let their editor know, you know?
Yeah.
Or if you try to bullshit your editor a little bit. I will tell this story on myself. This was very early in my career. I won't say what book it was or who I was working for. And I was still living in New York City. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and the offices of said company were in Manhattan. I was supposed to show up that day with some pages that I didn't get done. And so I wanted to stay home and get the pages done. And so I called the editor and said, well, you know, I can't get in today. And the editor said, well, are the pages done? And I think it's the only time I ever did it. I just lied and said, yeah, they're done. And the editor said, great, we're going to send out a messenger to pick them up. Which was the perfect lesson for me to just tell the damn truth. You know what I mean? It's not in my nature to lie anyway. It was just sheer panic on my part. And so, oh my God, they're sending out a messenger. They'll be here in 2 hours. I wrote those pages in a white heat. And let me tell you something else. No messenger ever arrived at my door. It was a brilliant tactic to scare the hell out of me and teach me a lesson. And it worked. It worked perfectly. And that was the end of that for me. I pride myself on the fact that I have to say for 99 9/10% of my career, even on my worst day, even if the work maybe wasn't, you know, something you would think was great, I've been a professional. I get the work in on time and I treat my fellow creators as professional. And you know, you can have all the talent in the world. If you're not a professional, if you don't get the work in, you don't have a career. It's as simple as that. You know, just like, you know, if you can't get along with people, if you're a prima donna, you know, you have to, there's a balance of things. You're working with other people. You have to be a human being. And we're all human. We're all going to have conflicts. We're going to have editors we get along with, editors that we don't get along with. So you learn over the years. You work with the people that you enjoy. But, you know, be a professional, treat other people with respect and get the work in on time. And I got to tell you, from an editor's point of view, getting the work in on time is just as important or more important as having the work be good. Because if the work isn't in on time, that book's not coming out.
True. Okay, you got any questions, Bill?
Yes, I have quite a few. No, I just have a couple. But JM, I wondered how you feel about the fact that they've made it very clear that it's going to be your version of Guy Gardner in the new Superman movie. I was curious what you thought about that and how you felt about adding to the pantheon of comic writers that have added to the cinematic experience of said characters that you've been known to create or create the best version of.
Yeah, they've got Guy Gardner's in the movie, Maxwell Lord's in the movie. And I know that James Gunn is a big Justice League International fan. So I'm kind of hoping that they're piece by piece setting up a JLI movie or TV show, which I think would be great. I have a lot of faith in James Gunn. I've been lucky enough to have conversations with him on social media. We had a Zoom call about Creature Commandos, which was something that I created when I was in the business for about 4.5 minutes, which they're now turning into this animated series. He's a real fan. He understands these characters. He doesn't just respect the characters, he respects the creators. So I have a lot of faith in him and what he's going to do. And I would love to see a JLI a movie or series. That would be fantastic.
I think Nancy in a ginger wig is a hilarious visual anyway. But no, I think when he gives a role like that to someone like him, it's almost a foregone conclusion he's going to use that character more than just the vehicle that's presenting itself. like you did with John Cena in Peacemaker.
Right.
So,
Right.
I believe you're right. I believe JLI or something in that vein will come eventually, and even more of what you've produced on the page will turn up on the screen.
Yeah, I hope so. That would be great. That'd be really, really great. You had another question, Bill?
Yeah. Well, I was curious. I've been thinking a lot about, since last time we saw you, which was shortly after Keith passed away. I was curious where you're at now with that, and with processing the loss, and your brother from another mother when it came to creating comics, and anything else you wanted to add to what you told us last time.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much to add other than the fact of, as it is with anyone in your life that passes away, there's a part of your brain that processes it, and there's a part of your brain that still thinks they're around, that thinks you can pick up the phone and give them a call and say, hey, Keith, what's happening, And Keith passed away, Dan Green passed away, Michael Zulli just passed away last week. These are all people, that I worked with, that I liked and respected, not just as creative people, but as people. And I'm sure I'm forgetting people. Don Perlin passed away recently. Don, God bless him, was 94 years old, which he had a good long run. But I said to somebody recently, I'm tired of using the words late, great in front of the names of people that I know. So yeah, it's just sad, but unfortunately, that's life.
Yeah,
that's life. But yeah, no, I miss Keith. I miss Dan. Michael, I hadn't seen in years, but it's a funny thing when you've worked with someone, when you had a nice connection with someone, whether you've seen them or not, you feel that loss. Michael gifted me. He worked on my Vertigo series, Seekers into the Mystery, way back when. He did a 4-issue arc, and he gifted me with this beautiful painted cover that he did, gigantic, which has been he gave it to me as a housewarming present back in the 90s. It's been hanging in my house ever since, So in a way, I've been interacting with Michael every day, but every time I look at that painting. So, and it took on more of a bittersweet feeling, of course, after he passed away. He was a very...
You're not mobile. We can't see that, can we?
No, it's downstairs. It's downstairs.
If there's any possibilities in some way, shape, or form, if you could email me a photograph of that.
If you scroll through my social media feed to last week when the word came about Michael passing away, I posted a picture of that. But I'll find it and email it to you. Sure. Yeah. So yeah, and I was just thinking about Keith today. Just I heard his voice in my head. It was like, you mean I can't talk to him on the phone? That's so weird. It's like it's a strange, sad thing. But again, what can you do? There's nothing I can do about it except pay tribute to these guys. Dan Green. I'm so glad that Marvel is finally, after all these years, reprinting the Doctor Strange graphic novel that we did into Shambhala. Which will be in the next Doctor Strange Masterworks edition. Came out as a graphic novel back in the 80s. It was around for a few years, and it's been out of print for decades. It's been printed in other countries, but never been printed here. And Dan, who was primarily known as an inker, painted all the art for this. Dan was an extraordinary artist. Dan and I were friends. Yeah, Dan and I were friends for years and years. Our kids grew up together. We lived near each other. And I'm just so glad this is back in print and will be back in print, and people can see just the full depth of his incredible talent in that series, in that graphic novel, which is one of my favorite things that I ever did for Marvel.
Well, and we just lost last week. I don't know if you knew Stephen, but we lost Stephen Sweeney, who was a cover artist. And
no, I did not know him.
Yeah, and he died in a fire last week.
Oh, God.
I found out after the fact, but it's just I've lost 3 friends in the last 2. I mean, also, when you get to our age, it seems like you lose a lot more people too. And I'm getting to the point where I'm realizing that's just part of the cycle of life, but it still doesn't make it any easier.
No, it does not. It does not make it any easier. And, even I was talking to somebody about this recently, even when someone is, quote, old and lived a good long life, it's still a loss. And sometimes the people that live to the ripe old age are the ones that we feel that they're going to be in our lives forever. My father
reached such an old age.
Yes, my father-in-law was 97 when he passed away.
Wow.
He'd been in my life for 30 years or more than that. And those people, they're just woven into the fabric of your being. And there's some part of you that thinks, well, they're just going to keep going. They'll always be here. So having them for so long, and in another way, makes it's hard no matter what. No matter what, we're human, and losing people that we know and care about is a difficult thing. It's just the nature of the beast.
It's true. That's true. Well, thank you for that, Jam. I appreciate that. I think about him a lot because my friend Morris and I are huge Ambush Bug fans, and we were approached to do a rough workout on an Ambush Bug animated series about 9 months ago. And now I told him when that happened, we're still working on it when he passed away. And I told him, I go, this is a lot harder to do now that he's dead. I go, because I don't know. I would not want to do anything that he wouldn't want us to do with the character because it's his character. But apparently James Gunn really loves the character. So you never know. But we did do the rough. We sent it in. We haven't heard anything, but that's okay. It was just harder for me to do with him being gone for some reason. Even though I never knew Keith, it was harder for me to do something with someone's property, knowing that they couldn't have a say-so in it. So I just that made me think about it.
Right. The truth is, when you're creating characters for Marvel and DC, even if you have a creator cut of that character, it's their character, and it's going to go on, and lots of other people are going to continue to work on it and change those characters, change my characters, just as I've played with other people's characters. It's just what happens when you're working in a shared universe. They're not really yours anymore in that sense. Right. The DeMatteis, hey, that's ours. No one's messing with this unless we're in control, But if I create a character for Marvel or DC, they're doing the Creature Commandos. They've changed almost everything about it, which is fine. I'm sure it's going to be great. But I can't go and say, well, don't change that. Only change this. So, DC owns it. They've owned it for years. And you know what? It's a good thing to get it out there in the world. And it only helps me in the end anyway.
Does it drive you wild when they change sort of stuff like that? I know a lot of the comic geeks annoyed when they change things about stuff from the comic book and the movies. I don't like that costume. I give them a different costume. Or Chinese spandex or.
They're called adaptations. In an adaptation, you have to adapt. And a lot of the animated movies that I've worked on, I've worked on stuff that was based on comics, and we changed things. When we did Superman Red Sun, the animated movie of that, that's a massive, sprawling story, a great story. But to whittle that down to 80 minutes, 85 minutes, whatever it finally was, you had to throw away things. You had to change things. You had to alter the ending. You had to add new elements that weren't there before to make it work in that medium. And I always say, if you want something that's exactly like the comic, guess what? You can read the comic. I think what a great adaptation does, it doesn't have to be true to the letter of the story, to every event that happens. It has to be true to the spirit of the story. If they violate the spirit of the story, the essence of the story, then it's a bad adaptation. Doesn't matter how many pieces you change. What matters is the heart and soul of what that story is and the themes and what it's about.
And the thing is, whatever you do, there's always going to be some geeks who aren't happy with it. There's always going to be someone sort of chatting, "Oh, this is rubbish. They've changed this. The ar's pointing the wrong way on his," something like that,
But you also know what happens. People see one set photo of something, and they go on a rampage about a picture, or even a trailer.
They have no context, and they just go nuts. Yeah,
the picture's not the movie. The trailer's not the movie. The movie is the movie. Yeah, and everyone's free to like it or not like it. And we're passionate fans, so we're all at heart a bunch of opinionated assholes, aren't we? And that's the fun of it. As long as we're sharing those opinions respectfully. When you see people on social media attacking creators in unkind ways, or the thing that always gets me, the guy that says, writes this review of something, not necessarily my stuff, hates it, tears it apart, and then tags the creator. Like, really? Really? You really want him to see how much you hate this work? Be free to have your opinion. Don't go tagging the creators. Or the other thing that that I have to remind people about periodically is maybe they love something I've done, but the way they express their love for what I've done is to knock somebody else. Your version is so much better than so-and-so's version. So-and-so's version really is awful, but yours is great. Don't do that. Focus on the things you love, praise the things you love, share the things you love, and unless the thing you don't love is so morally reprehensible, which when are you going to run across that? Maybe, twice in a lifetime. If, there are things in the world out there that are morally reprehensible, but how many things in a comic book are morally reprehensible? It's just things that we like and we don't like. It's all opinion. Opinion is really fun to share as long as we do it respectfully.
And decades and decades later, your Defenders, Gerber's Defenders, it's the same team, but there is so mind-bendingly different and yet the same.
Well, because there's a spirit to that. But I have to say that the first Defenders Masterworks is coming out in September. Beautiful hardcover, really beautifully printed Defenders edition. That's like the first year of my run. But Gerber was a great inspiration to me. Gerber really set the tone for that book more than anyone else. And the tone was, the training wheels are off. Do whatever the hell you want. Make it personal, make it yours, and go in whatever crazy direction you want.
That's what I said. I love yours, but I'll never knock Gerber because
Gerber.
Look
Gerber
at that
was
stuff.
he was absolutely brilliant.
They always had really, really good. I mean, this is my own opinion, but they always had their A-list writers to me on Defenders, and even with David Anthony Kraft.
Steve Englehart was the first guy on the book.
That's who I was going to mention next. Yeah, and it's just like they always gave the best talent to that book for some reason. I mean, because it was great. It was a great book, and it was second only to Avengers as far as the teen books at Marvel.
But it was also the oddball book over in the corner where you could do weird things with weird characters. What I enjoyed about writing that book was they were almost all B or C or D list characters, which means that nobody else in any other editorial office cared about those characters, which meant I could do whatever I wanted to do with them.
Mute me.
All right. I must admit, like, if social media in back in the early 90s or late 80s, I probably would have been one of them people flaming you because Blue Beetle. I love Blue Beetle. It was the first run I read from the beginning to the end, and when he went over to Justice League, I hated how he was portrayed. I collected that to start with, and then I stopped collecting it. And if I ended up collecting them all like later on when I calmed down and stopped being such a knee-jerk reaction idiot, but I just couldn't understand. I didn't I thought my superheroes meant to be serious. This is too silly. And at the time I didn't appreciate it, but now I do, obviously. I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say about Max Lord killing Blue Beetle later on. You wasn't involved in it. Was you involved in that story? Max
no.
Lord
The killing.
How did you feel about that? Did that?
I'll give you a lot of different feelings. I think when it happened, we were all, everyone, me, Keith, Kevin, we were all like, the hell are they doing? Because it really felt like at the time, DC had it in for our version of the Justice League. It's like, oh my God, there is no room for characters with both humanity and humor. And, in my mind, that was not our Maxwell Lord. He would never have done that, blah, 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 blah. So you get upset about it for 15 minutes. And going back to what I said before, it's a shared universe. Everybody gets to play with what they want to play with in the way they play with it. And as time goes by, things reset. Keith and I went on to do Justice League 3000 and 3001, and we started bringing all those characters into that book. And what we realized by that point, in our minds anyway, our Justice League existed in its own universe, parallel to the DC universe. And there are some events that were similar, but it wasn't the same universe. So we picked up where we left off in our Justice League, and all in our minds, all that stuff that happened in between never happened. And the bottom line is, even if they changed everything, as Keith used to say, the stories are still there. Go back and read the stories. It's all just pretend anyway. So just read those stories and enjoy them and ignore the other ones. Or if you like the other ones, enjoy those stories and ignore ours. It doesn't matter. They're stories. Read the stories that you love and enjoy them.
Yeah. I kind of feel like when they did that, it kind of colours you when going back to read the earlier stories. Because I was reading them and thinking, well, he's going to end up killing Blue Beetle at some point. It just kind of like it tarnishes the stories from earlier, knowing what's going to happen in the future. You know.
I hear what you're saying, and that's why we sort of decided that our stuff exists someplace else, and that's a different Maxwell Lord. You know, that's a different Maxwell Lord.
Yeah, fair enough. That's the way to do it, I suppose. Can't think what else to say now. So, how long you got left on the Kickstarter?
It goes till August the 6th. August 6th.
Do you know what the postage is like to the UK? Because I've tried doing Kickstarters from the America before, and the postage has been so mad. It's like not worth dealing.
Yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure overseas postage is going to jack up the price quite a bit. But there's also everything is also available digitally as well. So for people that don't want to go for the overseas postage, then they can get digital copies of everything. It's all there in digital form. That's that's the fun thing. You've got digital, you've got print, you've got the individual issues, you've got the individual issues with the alternate covers. You've got collected editions. If you just want to get the collected edition with the 4 main stories in it. My buddy Danny Fingeroth, a longtime Spider-Man editor and author of a great biography of Stan Lee, among other things, is writing the introduction for the new collected edition. So there's all different ways, all different packages. Someone said they love JL 3000. Thank you. So did I. Yeah. So there's always a way. There's always a way.
That's Damien there. Yeah, you got any questions, Damien? See if the audience wants to chime in a little bit here.
Yeah, if anyone's got questions, I'm happy to answer them.
What else are you working on at the moment? Did you start another Spider-Man story recently?
Yeah, it's right now. The Shadow of the Green Goblin. The fourth and final issue will be out at the end of this month. That's been a blast, having a great time with that story. It takes place in the very, very early days of Spider-Man's career, the first month after Uncle Ben died. So it's an area that hasn't been deeply explored before, and it involves Peter and Aunt May dealing with their grief about Uncle Ben and how, or not dealing with it, which is the real issue for the both of them. It involves Gwen Stacy and her family because her mother is dying, and of course we take a very deep dive into the wonderfully dysfunctional Osborn family, and then on the Spider-Man front, it's just. I'm fascinated by this question of this 15-year-old kid. When I was 12 years old reading Spider-Man seemed really old. And now you look at it and you go, when this started, he was 15 years old. He didn't know what the hell he was doing. And he's dealing with the grief and the guilt of his uncle's death. And he suddenly got this power that he doesn't know how do you control it? You always see these superheroes going, well, I was able to check my punch just enough that I could knock him out without hurting him. He doesn't know how to do that stuff. If he hits you the wrong way, you're going to end up in the hospital or dead. There's a wonderful little beat in the second issue. I'll give a little bit away where he's battling with the Sandman, and they're both exhausted. And Sandman is in the same boat. He was just a regular guy. All of a sudden, he turns into this giant sand thing, and they both say, time out, and they go sit on a roof. And the two of them just talk about how weird their lives are. It's like, look, I'm going to go rob a bank again tomorrow. I'll meet you there. We'll finish this fight. For now, let's just talk. And Peter is overwhelmed by everything in his life at this point. And with the Osborns, we bring in Harry's mother as a very important part of this story. And we pulled out this obscure character from the 90s called the Proto-Goblin. When Norman was first working on that Goblin formula, he tried it out on one of his assistants and turned him into this horrible thing called the Proto-Goblin. And he's the main villain. And when I put villain in quotes because he's not a villain, he's just another tortured soul trying to figure all this out. So it's there's all the superhero slam and bang, but it's really a study of family relationships and how we deal with grief. And a wonderful new artist named Michael St. Maria is doing the artwork. And it's been getting a really, really terrific response. I'm really happy with it. And then we just launched, came out July 10th, the first issue of Robin Lives, which I'm doing with Rick Leonardi. And that is basically answering the question going back to the 80s when Jim Aparo and Jim Starlin did the Death of Jason Todd story. What if he had lived? So this picks up exactly from that beat, except he didn't die at the Joker's hands. He survived, So what does that do to him? What does that do to Batman? What does that do to the Joker? And it's been really fun because I haven't written Batman in a while, and simultaneously while I was working on this series, I ended up writing an episode of the new animated Cape Crusader thing that's coming up on Amazon in August. So I got to be like totally immersed in Gotham after not writing the character for a really long time. Rick Leonardi's doing some really, really beautiful art. And again, it's got all the superhero slam and bang, lots of villains, all that stuff. But it's really a story about trauma. Jason has been traumatized by these events. Batman has been traumatized because he's the one that led this kid into this situation. And the basic question is for Batman is, what the hell are you thinking? Why do you keep taking children into war like this? So he has to really face that and deal with that. And then you have the Joker running around as a wild card. So I'm really, really having a great time with this series. And the second issue will be out. Well, the first issue just came out July 10th, so the second one will be out in August.
That kind of Batman having having wards and sidekicks. That's kind of like when it came in the Golden Age. No one thought about that until did they? It was just like fun fist flying adventures. How would it be more serious about it? No one would do that in reality, would they? So how do you?
No, there would be superhero social services would be knocking on Batman's the door of the cave, saying, "Excuse us, we are taking this child away from you." You know.
Superman would say to Batman, "What are you doing?" Wouldn't he? Superman
exactly.
Yeah.
And he has to really deal with that. There's a scene in one of the later issues where he sits down to talk to Nightwing to say, how do you feel about this? How do you feel about the life I've given you? And it's an interesting moment for the two of them.
And it was really gut wrenching if you think about the original story, where Dick Grayson, Detective Number 40, when Dick Grayson becomes Robin. Because it was heart-wrenching to me, even though as a kid, I identified in the 70s as the artwork as being a little remedial compared to the Neil Adams and stuff that was coming out at the time. It got me right in the heart. And I still remember Dick Grayson crying, and having to be held back after his parents fall to their deaths. And that, for me, was even more of a wrenching death than Bruce Wayne's, because it was very apparent that even then that something was awry and something happened that should, because they even make a point of saying they do a safety check before every performance. So I just, comics have always been fraught with that, but I always thought the Robin story was especially, it's on the same par as Peter Parker, Uncle Ben's death kind of thing for me, where they, and yes, Spider-Man could have done something about it. He didn't. Robin couldn't have done anything about it. But it just seems like a very similar story to me.
Interesting. Yeah. And, back in the 40s, as you said, it was a different flavor to comics then, and having the kid sidekick, they thought was a way to have the kid readers identify. When, as other people have said, and it's true, kids weren't identifying with Robin. They were identifying with Batman. They weren't identifying with Speedy. They were identifying with Green Arrow, So I don't think kids dreamed of being Robin. Kids dreamed of being Batman.
That being said, though, I always identified with Little Archie for some reason. Maybe because he was a normal kid, but Little Archie made me like Archie. So, because I was probably just a little older than Little Archie when I started reading it. So I'm just saying, I agree with what you're saying, but there are certain characters that, because they were kids, they did bring kids more into the story. But sidekicks, not so much. I agree with what you're saying.
Right. And so, like when they did Teen Titans in the 80s, they matured those characters a little bit because they knew they couldn't do them the same way. Right. But the bottom line is really in today's world, there's no way that you would be, if Batman was being created now, that there would ever be a Robin, unless maybe Robin was at least 19 or 20 years old.
Right. Well, they learned that with Captain America because they made Bucky his age, which a lot of people were appalled at. But for what reason would a 12-year-old be embedded in the army in Nazi Germany?
Right. Let alone Steve Rogers is saying, "Come on, let's go put on a costume and we'll fight Nazis together in the middle of the worst war that the world has ever seen."
Yes.
And Bucky didn't even get a shield, did he?
No, he didn't. Right. The adult has the shield, and the kid's just running around like, "Holy crap, what's happening here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, the shield brought him back 20 years later. What did Bucky have? Bucky wound up being frozen for another 40 years or something.
Right.
That's funny, man. That's funny.
Well, speaking of Cap, I was looking for a segue to broach into this one. I tried to avoid it the first 3 visits to rehash stories you've probably told a million times and things, but I want to open a few doors. And you can pass on this if you want, but the Cap shooter ultimatum.
Yeah. I'll tell the story and I'll put it in perspective, because my perspective now is very different from my perspective then.
Yeah.
I had been writing Captain America for, a couple of years, 2-3 years at that point. And I was working on this, what was a year-long storyline, which in my mind was going to be the final confrontation between Cap and the Red Skull. Now, it's comics. It's never the final confrontation. We know that. But you have to write it as if it is. Just like in comics, no one ever stays dead. But if you don't write that death as if it's real, if you don't feel it and weep as you're writing it, you're not gonna sell it. So this was going to be the final confrontation between Captain America and the Red Skull. They both almost die. By the end, the Skull does die. Everyone that Cap has ever loved has been threatened. And so what I was thinking at the time was, it's the 1980s. Cap's been doing this for decades. The same thing. Fight the bad guy. Punch the bad guy. This is how we end the problem. We drop a building on the bad guy. And Steve Rogers is one of those characters, when the more you write them, the more you come to know them, not just as characters, but as people. And the way I felt about Steve was he would reach a point after that confrontation where he would say, "You know what? I can't do this anymore." Because he's not inherently a violent man. There's got to be another way. I'm trying to affect positive change in the world. So how can I do that? Everyone I know and love has been drawn into this. They almost died. They've been tortured. It's been horrible. I'm done. He throws his shield into the East River, and he decides he's going to find another way. So he decides at some point that he is going to be a global activist for peace. But the fun of the journey would be that when you're a guy who's been a warrior all your life, it's not that easy to suddenly turn your back on that. And he's going to slip and he's going to slide. And I had this whole massive story worked out. Meanwhile, we had Jack Monroe, who was the Bucky of the 1950s, who was in the book as well. Ultimately, where the story was going to lead is that Bucky could not stand the change in Steve. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. He was going to assassinate Captain America. Now, this is 30 years before they did the assassination of Captain America. And then I was going to replace him with a new Captain America. And I remember my thought process at the time was, I'm either going to do Sam Wilson, which 30 years later they did, or I had a Native American character called Black Crow. What I finally landed on, I said, wouldn't it be great to have a Native American Captain America? The first Americans are Captain America. So I worked out this whole storyline. I had a whole overview. Went to my editor, Mark Gruenwald, with it. Here we go again with that phrase, the late great Mark Gruenwald, who wonderful guy, wonderful editor. And he approved it.
Yeah.
Well, he approved the story, and I started working on it. And then Jim Shooter got wind of it, and Jim did not like that story. And now to put it in perspective now versus then, Jim was the custodian of the entire Marvel universe. It was his job to call the shots and decide, what was going to work for these characters and what wasn't. And from his point of view, I remember his line was, "My Captain America would never act like that." Well, my response would be what? My Captain America would. It doesn't matter. He's the editor-in-chief, And also in the course of this story, one of the fundamental things to the story was it's Marvel's maybe most iconic character questioning the very things that every single character in the Marvel universe is doing. So you're basically pulling out the underpinnings of the whole universe and saying, maybe this isn't the way to go, So I can understand it from Jim's point of view. Regardless, Jim said, we're not doing this story. At the time, I was very, very upset. I quit the book. Cap 300, which was supposed to be a double-sized issue, but the second half was the beginning of the new story. They sliced that in half. Shooter rewrote a lot of it, so I left my name on for the plot and put a fake name on for the script. Gruenwald gave me the name Michael Ellis, which is a name from a Monty Python skit. He's a guy that everybody talks about, but he never shows up. So I was the man who was never there. It was Michael Ellis' script is what it says in the book. And that was the end. But I loved this idea. And I started working on it as a creator-owned thing. And I came up with one version. Remember, I pitched it to Epic Comics and it didn't fly because I think, as I recall, yeah, there were some difficulties there as well. So I worked on it, put it away. Some years went by. I worked on it. I pitched it. People just didn't get it. I kept working on it, found an artist who was interested, worked on it again, pitched it, got turned down. So finally, this is from 1983 to 2008 or 9, I think. My buddy Mike Cavallaro said, I'll do it with you. And I pitched it to IDW in the morning. It was called, by that time it had evolved a lot into a story called The Life and Times of Savior 28. Pitched it in the morning, got approved that day. So it only took 30 years to get approved in one day. And the truth is, I'm glad I waited because the story that I got to tell in The Life and Times of Savior 28, there was no one looking over my shoulder. We created our own universe of characters and told our story in our own way. So, and that's the funny thing about stories, you know, I'm not in control. I wanted to tell that story in 1983. That story said, sorry, buddy, it's going to take you till 2009 to get this out in the world, you know? So, but it's one of my favorite things that I've ever done, The Life and Times of Savior 28. So anyone that enjoyed my Captain America run, I think would really, really enjoy this book.
Outstanding.
So that's the story. So no, looking back, Shooter was doing his job. You know, I can disagree with him. He can disagree with me, but he was just doing his job.
Yeah. Speaking of Mr. Gruenwald.
Yeah.
His wish to have his ashes in a book. Awesome. Weird. Perfectly wonderful. I would think that'd be more of a Gerber move, honestly, but you know. Fantastic.
Mark, I don't know if anyone loved comics more than Mark Gruenwald did. He was so immersed in it. I mean, this is the guy that came up with the handbook of the Marvel Universe. You know what I mean? Every granular detail. You know, he was, and he was just a really good guy. He was only 43 when he died.
Jeez.
You know, it's extraordinary. And you know, in those days at Marvel, we were all, you know, we're all contemporaries. We're all within a few years of each other. Not all of us, but most of us within a few years of each other. Guys like Gruenwald and Danny Fingeroth and Tom DeFalco and Carl Potts and Bob Budiansky, Ann Nocenti, a bunch of people. You know, we were friends. You know, it was a really nice community of friends, and we weren't just connecting professionally. We all liked each other and enjoyed each other's company personally. So you make nice connections with people. And I remember when Mark passed away. Boy, that was really, really, that sent shockwaves everywhere. Just everywhere, yeah. Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, I kind of take inspiration from him because the one regret I'm going to have in life is I'm never going to go to space. But maybe I can pull a Timothy Leary and throw a bit of my ashes up in something that goes up there one day. On the morbid end of things, do you have anything like that you envision?
What do you mean?
You know, like.
After I'm dead?
I mean, granted, I'm fighting cancer, so
when the time comes.
Well, I'm fighting cancer, so I'm actually thinking about it all the time.
Yeah.
What's going to happen with my ashes or whatever. But has it ever crossed your mind, you know? Like I said, I want my ashes in space. He wanted his ashes in a comic book.
Right. You know, I know what I want done. I know what I want done. I've discussed it with my family, and we've all discussed what we want done, and that's all very private and very personal. Yeah. You know, when I look at
that was just asking about the.
No, that's okay.
You know,
that's okay.
Personal.
You know, when I look at a question of legacy, for me, my legacy is my kids, my 2 kids. That's my legacy. The work is great, and I hope the stories live on, but my kids are more important than any of that.
I saw your Father's Day post with your kids, and your son's a metalhead, isn't he? Or was it your
what?
He had a t-shirt on of a band. He had a band.
Oh yeah, that was probably him. Yeah.
I do a heavy metal podcast, and I played that band that week. Because I never heard of that man before. And I thought I looked him up.
Oh, Cody is so deep into music in a really granular way. You know, he's always been the one that as years passed and I was sort of losing touch with music, he knows what I like. So he will find the band that kind of resonates with the music that I like and turn me on to new bands that he knows fits my paradigm. He's really shrewd that way. Yeah, I'm very lucky. I have two really, really, really great kids. And, you know.
Have they got any like writing skills?
Well, my son, you know, Adult Swim, the TV station, Adult Swim. Yeah, he works. He works for Adult Swim. Has worked there for years, so he's involved in the TV business. My daughter, she does marketing and PR and that kind of stuff, but it involves a lot of writing. She's always been a really, really good writer. Cody was also a good writer. So yeah, they're both very creative, very talented. Katie's got a podcast. She and her husband and a friend of theirs do a podcast where they interview people in the creative arts. So yeah, they're both very, very creative people. And Cody's been doing the Adult Swim thing for years. He's high up the food chain there. Yeah.
Nice. Going back, a couple of questions popped up, and everyone they got left behind when we started chatting about other things. But when it comes to like creating characters, like a superhero character, what do you think is the most important thing? Like the origin, or the power set, the name? What do you think is, or do you not think about that? You think more about the story?
No. The most important thing is character. You know, we talk about Spider-Man. Someone could have taken the idea. Kid gets bitten by a radioactive spider and can climb walls and shoot webs and make the worst comic book in the history of the world. What made that work is Peter Parker is creating a three-dimensional, flawed, relatable human being. So in the end, you know, powers and all that stuff, that's like window dressing. That's icing on the cake. But the cake is always character. If you don't create a three-dimensional character that people can relate to and connect with emotionally and psychologically, then it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. That's my point of view.
Well, and I've never heard of a character that was compared more to its creator than Peter Parker and Steve Ditko, because Steve Ditko looked like Peter Parker when he was a teenager and people knew it. And it's funny, I can't think of another comic creator that people would even think to get the character confused with the writer, you know, on that level. But I mean, I could be wrong. There might be other samples, but for example,
right. Well, I think a lot of people related the Thing to Jack Kirby as well.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree with that.
The tough kid from the Lower East Side. And the truth of the matter is, we all leave parts of ourselves in these characters. The fascinating thing about, we'll pick Spider-Man or Batman or any character you want. You know, these characters have existed for decades, but when you write them, you're writing them through the filter of your own experience. Right. So you are leaving parts of yourself in that character. So the Batman that exists today is composed of parts of dozens and dozens of writers. We've all left our imprint on that character. And it's fascinating, the separation between writer and character. So I give a whole part of myself to Peter Parker, and it's with him always, and yet he's always Peter Parker. He evolves and he grows, but we all leave, and that's the truth about these shared universes. We all leave our mark on these shared universes, and then the universe moves on at some point, and we're not involved with it anymore. But we are always, it's like pouring something into the ocean. It's always there in the ocean.
You leave bits of yourself everywhere you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Bill, so I got about, just so you know, I have about 10 minutes left, and then I got to get rolling.
Okay. Bill, you don't have that Steve Rude thing drawing with you, do you?
No, sadly I don't. I wish I did.
But I love Steve Rude's work. He's great.
Well, if I had the computer where I normally have it, I could show you the two paintings he did when he was here 2 months ago. The first day he did both paintings, believe it or not, and they're huge. He did them both in 2 hours. The first day he did a pastel of Supergirl and with a live model. And the second day he did a watercolor of Spider-Man with a live model. And they're both beautiful. I personally like the Spider-Man better because the Supergirl is just kind of a seated pose. and Spider-Man is in his Spidey pose, on his crouched down. But it was a fantastic weekend. He couldn't have been nicer to us. It was a good turnout. We lost money in the sense that it cost a lot to get him here, but we made money in the sense that we got to keep the paintings.
Bill,
so it's
kind of
really,
why I segued there, Bill, is you know who a guest you should have down at that shop down in San Antonio is, don't you?
JM, yeah. I would love to have JM and an artist he's worked with that he likes. I would love the combination of the two. That would be great.
Yeah. And you're headed out to San Diego this week. JM, are you going to San Diego next week?
Oh, I have not been to a convention since pre-COVID. I'm going to my first convention since then in December. I'm going to Brazil for a convention called CCXP, which I believe I've been told is the biggest convention in the world. So after not being to a convention for 3 or 4 years, I'm going to get dropped into the middle of this gigantic convention. If that goes well, I'm going to return to convention going next year. We'll see how it goes.
Now, I don't know if you remember this. You might, by me telling you twice when you've been on the show before, but I met you a few years back, probably, gosh, now it's been like probably at least 11 or 12 years back when you did Texas Con, and you and I talked for a couple hours.
Texas Con in which city? In which
city?
San
Antonio.
Oh, San Antonio. I remember the San Antonio
and you
convention.
and I had a really nice talk. I also got to meet Steve Englehart the year before that, or year after that. I can't remember now. I'm getting old. But I got to visit with two of my favorite writers of all time. And this was right when you were in the middle of Justice League 3000. And you really told me an awful lot about the things that went through your head trying to devise a 30th century that was believable yet still relatable. And I still remember that conversation.
Oh, that's good. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Well, I'm just a peon that doesn't get to meet great writers like you.
You're not a peon. It's just that you go to conventions.
I remember,
and you talk to a lot of people, and you go to a lot of conventions and you talk to a lot of people. So it's hard to keep.
But it was interesting because I've always thought whatever we devise or come up with for the Legion of Superheroes or Justice League 3000 or any characters that are a whole millennia ahead of us, you can't even come close to knowing what it will be.
Of course not.
I mean, but so you have to go with your best bet. And it's funny, even with watching Star Trek Discovery, which they wind up in the 30th century, it's funny because a lot of their idioms and stuff are the same that we use. And I'm sure...
Right, because they have to relate to the audience. Yeah.
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
Well, look at science fiction from the 50s and what they were predicting, and look at where we are. We are definitely living in a science fiction world right now, but we didn't expect that we'd all still be wearing jeans and t-shirts while we were living in it,
Right. We should be wearing like plastics and plastic
That's
clothing.
Right. Those Star Trek where they'd go to these planets and everybody looks like they work at Burger King, in these uniforms,
And then these Indianapolis conventions need to get their heads out of their ass and get you into here so I can take you on a Vonnegut tour of town.
Oh, that would be fun. Cool. That would be really, really fun. Well, maybe next year. We'll see.
Those are some of my favorite stories when you read an old sci-fi story and it's talking about the future, which is now well in our past. And it's like the technology is like completely out on both eras,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of old time radio. So there's a show from the 50s called, well, there were two of them. One is called Dimension X. One is called X-1. And they're all these science fiction shows, and most of them are set in like the faraway year of 1985 or 1995.
We're traveling to Mars.
And it's really wild. And the one thing that no one in the 50s could envision was the digital age. There, nothing like it in any of those stories. Even if they envision something like the internet, it's always plug in a card here.
I got one for you that I just thought of the other day watching A Good Place, and Ted Danson made a reference as Dick Tracy, and he was talking about his watch phone, and I'm like, oh dear God. They had Apple Watch phones back in like the early 40s.
Oh, right. Well, things like that, absolutely. But I mean, like things like what digital really is today. You know?
Yeah, I mean by comparison, but that was one that really.
Oh
blew
yeah,
me
that was way ahead of
like,
its time. Sure, Star Trek. There were a lot of things on Star Trek that came true. But if you know, even on Star Trek, like when they would be reading books on a screen, there was always a little card they'd be plugging into the computer to read the book. You know, they couldn't envision that it was just this wireless network of all this information flowing around.
Yeah.
If you take a half step back, the world that we're living in is really a very surreal science fiction world on every level. Some levels good, some levels not so good.
And then to think what in 50 years our grandkids and great grandkids, what's going to be commonplace to them would absolutely melt our brains.
Exactly. Even in a generation, I think, because things change so quickly. Anyway,
like
I gotta run in a minute. So I want to thank
Yeah.
you guys for having me back again and for allowing me to talk about the DeMatteis. I want to remind anybody that's listening, if you enjoy my work, if you enjoy the work of these amazing artists that I'm working with, please come aboard and support this. It's one of the greatest creative endeavors of my entire career. I'm having so much fun, and we really, really want it to continue. So thanks. Is there one last question you want to ask?
So when the 4 issues are done, you'll put them out in trades, I take it, and they'll be
say that again. I'm sorry, I missed that.
You said each story is going to be like a 4-parter, and will you put them into like a collected work and then sell them in comic shops once they get to that stage?
When we've done like 4 Kickstarters, and yes, I would think we would collect each individual series as well. In the meantime, we're doing each Kickstarter has a collection with the 4 main stories in it, with lots of extras and all those things. Yeah, but ultimately we would like to see. We want to finish off all these series and then collect them individually as well. Yeah.
And can you see this being taken to the little screen or the big screen?
Oh, absolutely. I could see all those stories being adapted for television or for movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I would welcome it.
I bet. Well, JM, thank you so much for all you do for us here at Geeky Weekly and all you've done for us as fans over the years with your great books. And
my pleasure, guys. It's always good to talk to you.
Not a question, just a simple request. Today is my grandson Alistair's 12th birthday, and they're out running around now. But if you could give my grandson Alistair a happy birthday shout out, you'd make my year.
Happy birthday, Alistair. How what'd you say? How old is he?
12.
12. Oh, that's a good age. That's a fun age. Yeah.
and that'll mean so little to him, but it damn near brought me to tears.
Oh, God bless you guys, and thank you so much. I appreciate you guys, and
we appreciate you.
I'm sure we will talk again before you know it. Take good care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good time.
Hey, guys.
God damn it, I love that guy.
I do too. I'm sorry. There's so much going on today. They shot another 4 episodes of the podcast that you guys saw me on, Relatively Famous. And they shot one with Morgan Freeman's son the other day. I'm trying to think who else they did today. They did an actress who's in Jumanji who I've never heard of before. Her dad was on there, and a famous basketball player as well. And I'm sorry, Major League Baseball. I get my sports mixed up. Sorry, so sorry. But so I did want to say I did get some new books last week. I don't know if I have any of them with me here at the store, but I did get Kyle. I'm going to ask. This is a question for Kyle, and I know he's going to get it, Gray. So, and it's not a softball; it's a hardball, but I know he's going to get it. What was the first appearance of Mr. A by Steve Ditko?
What was the first appearance? See, I keep always falling back on Charlton Bullseye, but it was pre-Bullseye, right?
It had nothing to do with Charlton ever. Mr. A, well, the question came first, but Mr. A is what he really had in mind for the character, and then Mr. A came.
Well, that came in Pacific Comics, right?
In 1969. So
see, now I'm all over the place.
okay,
with this one
okay.
because
So
I can't get the question out of my head for
it was
starters.
Wits End number 3.
Wits End.
Yes,
That's Wally Wood's.
Wally
That's Wally
Wood's
Wood's fanzine.
fanzine.
Oh.
It wasn't even really. Well, it's what you call a fanzine then. It's what we call heavy metal later.
Or
You know,
a pro. It's actually a prozine, is what.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah, and some of the greatest artists of our time got their start in it, like Ralph Reese and people like that. Now, I will say this. So there was a reason I bring Mr. A up also is there's kind of an epiphany the last few weeks. And I think it came out before Stan died, but the epiphany is that Stan Lee is the person who turned Steve Ditko onto Ayn Rand.
All right.
And it wound up biting him in the ass, of course, because it changed Steve's whole outlook on creation and creator ownership. And he was really, I mean, and I'm going to see Mark next week. Mark's dad, Steve's brother, Patrick Ditko, died last week at age 90. And he was Steve's younger brother and Mark's dad. And he was the head of the Steve Ditko Foundation, which I may be calling it something. I mean, it is a foundation, but maybe called something slightly different. But I'll see Mark next week. But it's kind of funny. The family really wants to keep his name alive and keep his work alive. And the only way they could have done that was to sue Marvel, which Steve would have never. And Steve knew it was going to happen because they told him, they said, you know what, why would you want to keep my name alive? Just keep the artwork alive. Well, in our society, you can't keep the art alive without the artist. I mean, maybe you can with comics to a certain degree, but everybody knows Steve Ditko and his relationship to Spider-Man and Doctor Strange and, Hawk and Dove and all the characters that he did in the 60s. Most everybody, all fans, know it was Steve Ditko. He's attached, I'll tell you this, I think he's attached more to his characters than any other comic artist, including Kirby, in a lot of ways, because he had his own embodiment in those characters. And he was the only guy who, because he got into an argument with Stan, he's the only guy who refused to do those characters for the last 40 years of his life. So, there's a lot to process there and a lot to, try to get into.
You guys hear the fireworks?
Huh?
You guys hear the fireworks?
Yeah.
There was got fireworks going off in bloody well July. Is
Well,
it Diwali or something like that?
In the U.S., we know what it's like in July 4th,
Yeah.
but not this late. But I'm just saying, no
Gun
I
fireworks.
thought you guys only did fireworks for Guy Fawkes.
Kyle, let's act nebulous for 5 seconds. Fireworks in July?
When's Guy Fawkes Day?
That's November. That Mr. A was a really weird character when he was like, was he something like he's only black and white and there's no shades of grey? Was it something like that? He
Correct.
was
That was him.
really weird. I've never read any, but
It was really over the top in a lot of ways, but it was also his the character that Steve Ditko basically believed was his ultimate creation based on his philosophies and what he thought. So very unique, very different. He had no problem throwing people off of buildings and doing things of that nature. So he was kind of a dick, but great stories. And Steve Ditko is just, he's a god.
It was very
it's a storytelling.
I don't know that familiar, but he seemed like he was quite a unique character. Was he like possibly on the spectrum at all? Do you think, or
Well,
a lot of people thought that, and
I wouldn't rule it out, but I will say this. He was a lifetime bachelor, but he was a super family man. And so he would go visit his family, I think, as often as once a month. And from New York to right outside of Philadelphia, I believe, Johnstown.
Is that a long way?
It's, from New York, it's probably maybe 200 miles, probably not that far. But I mean, you have to remember that's the worst traffic in the freaking world. So that has something to do with it. But no, he was with his family quite a bit because he didn't have a family of his own. So, and he did work with Eric Stanfield quite a bit. And Eric was known for S&M work. And you can look at a lot of his stuff and a lot of Steve's stuff, and you can see they were both visually very similar. And you can definitely tell. Do you know anything about Stanfield, Kyle?
Not off the top of my head. Give me a minute. I got to take care of something.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, neighbor. What's happening in your world, then, Bill?
Well, I have a week to go. I've been trying to letter this book for Phil. We may get someone to do it, the first story, and I do the second story, but I may wind up doing the whole thing. But and then, dude, I'm off for a week from work.
Well, you say a week to go to your con?
Yeah.
You mean?
Yeah. So as of Sunday, I will be off till a week from the next Wednesday. So I'll be off for like 10 days, which is great. I mean, I'll miss the paycheck, but I'll be working with Phil quite a bit at Comic-Con nonetheless. But what's going on there, Kyle?
He's got a plumber around. Turn your mic back on, mate.
That's my nephew, basically, just a plumber, just taking care of things. But yeah, that's the kind of day I'm looking at here. So I'll be back in a second.
You want to duck out for a bit? All right.
So, what can I talk about? What did I wonder did I bring anything cool with me today? Let me give me a second and just talk for a second, Gray. Let me look and see if I have anything in the car that I brought today to show off.
Yeah, I got a haul of comic books, but I left them at home now. I was around Lisa's. I've taken them home, so I've got no books to show. I've got a video that everyone wants to watch. Look at my latest load of comic books. Not that anyone's watching now. I can just sit here quietly, to be honest, because there's no one watching. Let's play one of my old videos, just for something to do. So look, where is it? Let's go with the DeMatteis song.
Created by Jack Kirby from comics from DC, the greatest ever Stephenson you'll ever see. They bristle with their teeth and blood to stop them from doing no good. But when time's a crisis all about, they trigger the summon up. Change, a war of man. Free the prince forever down. Free the light from fleshy mind. All the blood in the heart of fire. Gone, a war of man. Rise the demon that's begun. Gone, a war of man. Rise the demon that's begun. You're a demonic that's begun. Strong with lips of breath of fire, a beast of power and dark desire, an entity golden ancient time, he often speaks in twisted mind. Sometimes hard, sometimes slow, he yearns to rule in hell below, and fighting is done and danger fades, recite incantation to return into hate. Be gone, let's be gone, resume once more the form of man. Gone now, let's be gone, and rise once more the form of man.
There you go. did you get the email I sent you in the end? With all the tracks
Yeah,
on
I
it?
got it. Yeah, I was going to tell you. I want to claim that that's from my new band, Field of Screams, and I want to see if people think it's real. And once they realize it's not, I'm going to tell them it's AI.
I don't know.
I tell you, that song is fantastic.
Yeah, I know. I can't
Great,
believe
but
that.
I want to fake people out during Comic-Con week. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get with you and we're going to fix it to how we're going to do it before I leave. But while I'm there, I'm going to say, my new band is going to release our new song, which is an homage to the Demon, and then we'll tell the truth after it's all said and done. But so that's our plan. So
did you hear the Green Lantern one?
I can see myself singing that.
I do. I was walking around a comic mart, last comic mart in London.
Let's do it.
In my head.
Let's act like it's a real thing that we did with Ronnie James Dio before he died.
Did you hear the Green Lantern one?
Huh?
Did you hear the Green Lantern one?
Yeah. No, I have not. No, I heard half of it. What you need to do next is you need to do a Dead Man one.
Well, I've got a Superman one. I've done 6 versions of a Superman one, but I've not had a chance to give a listen. It's just up in the air. Is it a bird? Is it a plane?
We need to do a Bizarro in the Devo style. Me, I'm Bizarro. Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, the Bizarro code.
Me, I'm ugly. Thank you very much.
Us hate beauty. Us love ugly. You got something to show?
Yeah. Huh?
You got something to show?
Stay on the show?
No, have you got something to show?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Just couldn't hear you. Yeah, these are Captain George Whizbang, and these are reprints from the early 70s, late 60s of Captain George's Comic World is what it was. This is and this stuff is actually pretty awesome. They were only 25 cents back then, but they're some of your first actual reprints of classic Captain America stories. Marvel wasn't even reprinting a lot of this stuff.
What is that? What market was that printed for?
This was for the this is basically the fanzine market, and let's see if it has.
So what are they official reprints?
I don't see a year on it, but I know it's yeah. They don't even. I'm pretty sure based on how it's somewhat brown. I'm guessing this is probably 69. And then the next issue is on Virgil Finlay, the artist.
Okay.
He was famous for a lot of things he did for the early science fiction and pulp magazines. Here's another one with his artwork. He was quite good. This one is on. Is this? Oh, this is interesting. Oh no, Memory Lane. Okay, this came out looking like this is a reprint of a 1931 Life magazine, but black and white. I haven't even looked through all this stuff yet. It's been in an envelope up till now. Captain George's Comic World.
Silver Star.
The
2 hours.
Yes. And then Grand Slam Comics.
So these are all fanzines, yeah?
Well, these cross a line where they're more reprints than they are fanzines.
Well, are they official reprints though? No, like the company
they
knew they were doing it, or
okay,
they just anyway.
They do identify who the original copyright holder was, and then they also mark it with their magazine. So I'm not sure what they expected to do with that, but here I'll just go through. These are all the same magazine.
Oh, Prince Valiant.
Rip Kirby. Here's your favorite Golden Age magician,
Oh, Mandrake, is it?
Mandrake.
You know, he had a TV series, Mandrake. Did you know about that?
1971. A TV series?
Yeah. Yeah, Mandrake.
Animated?
I don't think so. Because I was reading an old article from a 2000 AD sci-fi special, and it was going through the history of like TV serials, Superman comics, and all.
I did not know there was a. I did not know
Mandrake
there was
only
an
had a TV show. It
I
went
knew there was a radio show, but I didn't know there was a TV show.
Yeah, no, it was talking about TV show. I might make a video of it for my channel, but it's a rather long article. It was talking about all the Buck Rogers and the Flash Gordon serials and all that kind of thing. So yeah, I didn't know about it. And also Black Hawk had a TV serial as well. Did you know Black Hawk?
Didn't know that. Well, that was a movie serial with Kirk Allen. Kirk Allen, the guy who played the first on-screen Superman live action. Oops.
Okay.
This is falling apart because these were like newspapers. They didn't have a staple.
No staples, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they're just direct reprints. And in a lot of cases, this was the first time you could see Golden Age stuff in black and white. So a lot of people like that, like myself. I mean, I was too young to watch to have these, but look at this.
Are these your pickups or are they the shops?
These are mine. These are from that collection.
Right.
And here's the Marvel they don't talk about anymore, Steamboat Marvel.
All right.
And for obvious reasons. And then here's a Captain Marvel Jr. I mean, this stuff was great. This is Macra Boy, who my friend, the late, great Roger Hill, wrote about and uncovered that Roy had some deep, dark secrets that the family didn't want to talk about.
Oh.
Yeah. Meaning he had a other side of his life, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And
secret sorted.
He basically lived a other life as a gay man, even though he was married with children.
Oh, right.
He didn't come right out and say it, but the family kind of asked him to tread softly. But
yeah.
And look at this. This is a bill of lading for the fanzines that Patrick bought.
Oh,
I think it's hilarious. And then Pogo, the possum. Very popular American character by Walt Kelly.
I never heard of him.
Yeah, and then this is a fanzine for Edgar Rice Burroughs, Herbdom. And this is one of the earlier ones. This has got a lot of Russ Manning artwork in it. And look at that stuff. Isn't that beautiful? It's gorgeous.
I was reading, I can't remember, I read it now. I was reading an old Wonder Woman comic, like an old Golden Age Wonder Woman comic. They are so bloody well, like, that whole S&M world. They talk about
it's very evident that's what was going on with William.
Looking back on it now, like, and with through like more learned eyes kind of thing.
It was very obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah. No duh on that. And then I want to show you this. So this
is worth a mention, Wonder Woman, in his book. The what's it called? The Seduction of the Innocent. Was Wonder Woman mentioned
considered a lesbian?
Yeah.
And so this is the rarest of the limited collector's edition of the Shazams. There were 3. The 2 other ones were based around the comic. This was based around the TV series.
Right.
And it even has a diorama of
yeah.
Yeah. Barry Bostwick's brother, Jackson Bostwick.
I don't think we got Shazam or ISIS in the UK on our TVs. I never saw it anyway. I don't think
artwork is absolutely fantastic. It was all the older stories. They never made you, and they even show you how to draw the characters in here.
Dr. Savani, Talky, Tony, is it?
Mr. Mind.
The Mind, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mind's both easy and difficult to draw. And here's Captain Marvel stopping a witch somehow. I don't know why, or how.
Because
Hey, Bill, hold on one
That's
second.
why.
And look, some of
hang on
Patrick's
one
drawings
second,
are in the middle here.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool.
I
What you say,
got
Carl?
to go take care of this, and I got to call my wife and stuff.
He
So
was
I just
quite
wanted to tell
good.
you.
All right,
I wanna-
Carl. See,
I want to tell you, fellas, I love you, and it was an amazing, beautiful show. So
yeah,
Well, thank you for
and I
setting it up.
appreciate
my man.
you. So
yeah. See you
I'd
next week.
imagine
Nick.
there'll be another one in the future, but
Kyle, look at this.
oh, God, don't torment me. All right, love you guys.
See you
Love
later,
you,
mate.
man. See you, Kyle.
See ya.
Love to Mrs. Carl.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle Andrews, an American hero, and our friend.
He's left the building.
He has left the building. So this is an interesting comic, and I believe it came out from the same people that were putting out the Monster Times at the time. And C.C. Beck, who was the creator of Captain Marvel, they're basically showing this is what would happen if the Marvel family acted like the comic characters in the 70s. You know, salacious. And here's Dr. Savannah, and he's speechless. He's like, "What the hell did you do to them?" So and then he always had some great commentary. May we have the next slide, please? And what's funny is that he had this groundbreaking commentary. I think it was maybe a couple issues after this, and where he said Picasso was a cartoonist, and the fine art world, they were totally upset. And so they were like, "How dare you?" And then he goes, "Oh, so Lichtenstein didn't steal directly from comic creators," which he did.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then it's fine art. And, you know, you have people like Mark Wasabi who did the same thing. And these guys get a pass for basically plagiarizing work. And it's just because they put it in a different format.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's nuts.
That's a total rip-off. It's not. How can you even have the cheek to call that your own? It's ridiculous. He never even credited the original artist, did he?
No. And he had plenty of opportunities. And if you look, so they did, I believe they did 10 Lichtenstein stamps recently. None of them were of the comic stuff because they were afraid they were going to get sued.
All right.
So because now the actual artists, their families and stuff, because most of those artists, the comic artists, are dead.
Yeah.
Most of them died penniless.
And I think I read an article once that one of the guys that he ripped off the most or something, and he wouldn't even buy him a drink or something like that. It was like, yeah,
it's like, screw you, man. I mean, we don't need you. And there's another artist, and he has a Hispanic name. I can't remember his name, but he's a great artist. But what he did was he did homages to the characters. He did not. He drew his own version, but it was a version that looked like the original version. And a lot of people lump him in with Lichtenstein, and I don't think it's the same. It's the same comparison.
Yeah.
You know, hey, what do you think of my Hawaiian shirt? It's the banana splits.
Oh, wow.
I got this for Comic-Con, but I'm breaking it in now so I can wash it a couple times. So it'll fit right. Okay, so the biggest, highest profile fan of the banana splits ever was who? Do you know?
I don't know.
And he even put him in a song. It was Bob Marley.
Okay.
There's a part in Buffalo Soldier.
Yeah, with that actually. That's not official, though, is it?
So no, it's actually totally documented. What happened was they would insist on taking their break from recording at 3:00 in the afternoon because that's when they ran the banana splits in Jamaica. So
I'm sure I heard somewhere else that was a coincidence.
They all love tripping out to these animals in costumes playing musical instruments, and they loved it. And so after they took their banana splits break for the day, they went back to the studio, and he goes, I'm going to add this to a Buffalo Soldier, which you wouldn't think that would go in a song about these black soldiers from the Civil War, but it did. It worked perfectly. It's Buffalo Soldier, and well, what's funny is there's now you almost want a buffalo to be part of the banana splits, you know. Hey guys, he's Jamaican too.
Jamaican buffalo.
Hey everybody.
I think there's a character.
It's Bob. Hey everybody, it's Bob Buffalo. Hey everybody.
There's a kid's character in like UK TV called Rasta Mouse.
Yeah. and I got in trouble because we were working with one of the comic properties I did years ago. We were working with Universal, and they wanted an update of their character Homer Pigeon, which was created by Walter Lantz, who created Woody Woodpecker. And so I came up with Homeboy Pigeon because it was the 90s, and I made him a rapper, and everybody loved it except for the one old dude that controlled all the strings. And everybody else was totally, oh my God, this is perfect. And we had these three characters, white guys, of course, that were criminals, and they were brothers, and they were called the Bad Raps, and each one of them had a different superhero power, and it was kind of, one was super fat, could grow bigger, one could make his legs go up like a jack, and the other one could make multiple versions of himself, he could fly because he had a beanie with a propeller, and it went over great for everybody until it got to the main dude, and then he was like, how dare you rap characters? And then the next season, the same some of the people from the same company came up with Hammerman, which is the MC Hammer superhero. So
they stole your idea.
What can I say? Bill Field, trendsetter.
So you keep always talking about animations, but we never see any of your animations.
Well, I have one that I'll show from the Don Ho cartoon show that was part of the pilot, and it's the only thing that I can find on. Well, what you have to remember is that it's not just getting the show. What the big part of it is that everything goes perfectly for it to actually get released once you do it. So most of my stuff, except for commercials that I've done in the Latin American market, most of my stuff has wound up basically never being released. And that includes the Don Ho cartoon show, because Don decided it'd be fun to die 3 weeks before the show premiered, so they cut the premiere because of it. That son of a bitch. But sorry, Don.
How inconsiderate.
Huh?
How inconsiderate of him.
I know that mother, but it was. He made it a family affair, not in a good way, because he got I think his nephew to come up with the animation company that I had to work with, and oh my God, dude, they were horrible. They all worked in Flash. It was like they did use my ideas the way I wanted them to, but the animation just looks so horrible. And I will show it to you, but I'm not like a big guy. I mean, a big fan of putting it out for everybody to see it because it's just so horrible. But my ideas are intact. So what I gave to it, I think don't come off badly. But it was a real shit show.
So why don't you do your own animations? Why don't you make your own short film?
I want to. I mean, now that I took over the comic store, I have a lot less time than I did.
You could be the next Aardman Animations or something. You could begin.
I do want to do more of that. And Alex and I have talked about that in depth. And Alex actually has learned a lot about animation programs. And he's done, I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff he's done, but he's taken some public domain Captain Atom stories and things like that, and he's animated them in the 60s.
Alex who?
Grand, who does comic book historians that I wrote the Neil Adams book with.
Okay.
And let me put a plug in for the book since I have one here.
So are you up to date with all the technology for animation then?
You know, I wouldn't say I'm super up to date.
Okay.
That's me and Alex.
Yeah.
And this, let me show off. I mean, it's not really showing off, but that's a picture of all of us and me going totally fanboy, sitting next to my idol, Neil Adams. I'm just like, I can't believe this.
Who's the lady? Is she a cosplayer or something?
No, that's Alex's wife.
Oh, okay.
And Alex is a plastic surgeon, so.
Ah.
But Alex is one of my best friends and just a really great guy, and we get along very, very well.
Right.
And you know, it's and that was, we did that interview 6 years ago, actually.
I should show you some of my animations.
Let's see sometime.
I'll show it. I'll go download it and show it to you in a minute.
Let me put this up real quick. I'm listening. Well, it's super hot here today too, by the way.
All right, just downloading it now.
Let me see.
This is
Guess how hot it is here today.
Oh God, 100.
It is 96.
Oh,
I don't know
God.
if you can see that, but 96 degrees, and that's as hot as it's going to get. Thank God.
So I've done a couple of like little animations. I got my brother to do like the artwork, and I'd mess around with it on paint. Or normally paint. I'd Photoshop as well. Actually, Photoshop was when I had Photoshop. You have to pay for that crap, so it's hard to sort of do nowadays.
Yeah.
But like you just literally just. So I'll show you this one. This is a little Cthulhu short that I did. The Real Cool Cthulhu show, I called it. But I had other ideas for more, but I couldn't be bothered because no one watched it. There you go. Let's watch it now.
Hello, I'm Cthulhu. I live beneath the sea. Why not come and visit me in my sunken city, Ollie? I keep on dreaming, even though I'm dead. I'm very funny looking with an octopus for a head. Hello there, would you like to meet my friends? Some say that we shouldn't be named, and even that we should not be, but that's just mean. Why, here's Shub-Niggurath, the goat of 1,000 young. How could such a doting mother ever be considered an abomination? And Nyarlathotep, the crawling chaos. He looks after his master Azathoth so diligently. I have so many good friends who are dying to meet you. Saphogua, Hastur, Dagon. Saphogua, that's a funny name. Can you spell Saphogua? Ollie will soon be rising from the Pacific Ocean. check out its architecture. Some say it's cyclopean. Join my friends and I when the moon shines gibbous-ly. I am sure that we all will get on squamously.
There you go.
Squeamishly.
Squamously.
Well, I have our old buddy Dale here, and our new buddy, my old buddy, but our new buddy Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hello.
And they think it should be on BBC Kids.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, as do I. Well, hey man,
Well,
I'm gonna have to sign off, but I want to say it's been a great week, and appreciate you, brother.
yeah. See you later, mate. See you next week.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, buddy. See you, Greg.
Bye.
Adios,
We'll end it now.
folks. See you next week. Bye.